Today's video is based off attitudes, behaviors within the many different forms, styles, and traditions of practice. Many believe that it is about financial profit. Profit is all right. It really is. As long as it doesn't violate the highest law of the self, which is to lose yourself or to harm yourself in some way. Many believe that when you have to put out works, you have to put out books on topics and price them extremely high for the knowledge that is in them. When truth be told, a lot of these works out there today are just hypocrisy. Some of them are nothing more than books based off sex or power, the false ideology of how to gain power within your own life, and doesn't actually break down the practices, how to set up altars, or to even begin to fathom the philosophical attributes behind the religious and philosophical works that you're trying to do or that you're interested in. But there's also another factor, and this is something that is being more and more noticeable on social media. You have a lot of individuals speaking on things that they have no knowledge of, no current understanding of what it takes to be, for an example, a Satanist. Most of today's community within Satanism believe that it is about being rude, that it's about being lazy, that it's about heavy metal music, and currently about suing people when you don't get your own way. This is not Satanism. Satanism is about the individual. It's about growth within your own spiritual and physical maturing and adaptation of growth. It doesn't have anything to do with another's practice. It is what you make it to be and what you connect to. In Wicca and paganism, it is the same exact thing, just in different areas. They believe that if you are a part of a coven, you belong to that coven and you have no rights to go outside of that coven's teachings to even begin to study, to practice other forms of magic. Because if you do, you are labeled an oathbreaker and betrayer. Even in the right-hand path, you're seeing the arrogance of laziness and false commitments to the deities, to the paths. When a child is asking for food and a Christian gives that child a Bible and says, "Here's the bread of Christ," that is not feeding a child. That is not growing and maturing that child. There's an old proverb which states, "To give a man a fish feeds him for a day. to teach a man how to fish feeds him for life. Churches today are sitting on anywhere between 10 grand to 100 grand, if not more. And yet, they're supposed to be here for the community, the children of their God. And yet, they can't put out that wealth to stomp out hunger, starvation, homelessness. When a pastor or a minister can afford to own a football stadium, raking in over $15 million a year, and yet doesn't do anything for the community that is beneficial. This is not practicing what you preach. And this is a growing problem within any philosophical state. It is downright laziness. It is the lack of understanding of what you are doing or what you are getting yourself into. This is why the adept who gets into any philosophical path working needs to understand that not everyone out there, not every article or path is 100% accurate. There is no wrong way or right way to practice witchcraft, Satanism, paganism, Wicca, Druidism, Voodoo, Hoodoo, Santeria, Santa Morte, or even the Judeo-Christian paths. You look at today's world. Today we have ISIS. Before that, Al-Qaeda. Before that, we had groups that supported terrorism, such as Saddam Hussein. And yet, these individuals who support these violent acts clearly have no understanding of the philosophical book that they claim to follow. For an example, the Quran was created as a pathworking of peace and understanding, acceptance. Just like the Judeo-Christian book, the Bible. The Quran was created by a guy by the name of Muhammad about 1,000 years ago. The first publishing of the Bible was 500 years ago in a physical state. But these paths have been around in many different forms. Anyone who does their research can find this out quite easily. If you look at the references, jot down things like names, links even, to where you can expand your horizons. When we get into the actual path workings, you have too many sitting there saying, well, we are right and you are wrong. Who said your way is right? And who said the other is wrong? What if it was vice versa? You see, this is a fearmonger's way of thinking. This is spreading paranoia, fear. And it keeps division. It keeps adversities going. This is why when you get into a path working, it is best to do your own research instead of accepting things at face value. A lot of people do not realize that in Satanism, there are many denominations, just as there are in Christianity. Even in paganism, there are different viewpoints. There are different belief systems. But unless you go out and actually do the research yourself and actually delve face first into it, you will lack that understanding. Respect is given, but it is also earned. You don't have to go out attacking each other just because you don't like another's point of view. You don't have to curse and deal with childish behavior just because you're frustrated and cannot get the people or the things in your life that you want. In some ways, those who do this type of thing literally are bringing upon themselves a self-made curse. You're cursing yourself in that arena. When we look at those who have succeeded in reaching their goals and are continuing to further those goals, be it a publishing company, a business, or even creating a religious foundation, such as, for an example, Become a Living God. That foundation is very, very good. E.A. Koetting and his friends did an excellent job when researching to begin their journey. And they are continuing to do so to this day. Frank White from The Serpent of the Grails is another one. Anyone who has watched his videos, jotted down notes, and experimented for themselves know that what he is putting forth does work. But it is not about how somebody else performs a ritual. It is about finding out what works for you as an individual. And a lot of people don't realize this. You can get on YouTube and you can get on social medias where videos and things can get made. And you're going to see children as young as 5, 6 years old talking about vampirism and how they got into vampirism or got into witchcraft without having a clear philosophical understanding of what they're practicing. When you ask them, what is the sanguine? Where did it come from? Who was the author? Who is the godfather, for an example, in vampirism? They cannot tell you. The answer to that question is Father Sebastian, the godfather out of New York. Even Michelle Bellinger wrote a book on psychic vampirism. There are at least 3 vampire Bibles out there, but only one of them is actually from an actual foundation. When you get into Satanism, everyone has their viewpoint of who's right and wrong. The COS, known as the Church of Satan, claims that they have the first and only rights to any philosophical materials. Because their church, their foundation, was created back in 1966. But here's the thing. Now you have the TST going around suing everybody for the way they believe, or in this case, let's take the Chilling Tales of Sabrina, the offshoot of Sabrina the Teenage Witch on Netflix. Very good show. Very excellent show, in my belief, in my own thoughts. I saw nothing wrong with the way they presented a potential witchcraft coven living in a community of mortals. But yet the TST got their knickers in a twist over the use of their statue of Baphomet. Now, this shows that they lack the understanding of the actual practice or the utilization of Baphomet. The statue of Baphomet as a physical being is known in demonolatry as being a guardian of the underworld, much in the same way as the Greek three-headed god, the dog, Cerberus. Okay? Who guards all the items of the underworld. Baphomet is the guardian of the underworld. He can distribute wealth. And he goes all the way back to the Knights of Templar, with a European church. The Knights of Templar were known as the protectors of the people in Europe for almost 700 years before they were vanquished by the Vatican and their works outlawed. But people today don't really know this because they lack that understanding, that knowledge, because nobody's teaching them. No one's sharing their knowledge. And everything that is happening today happened 40 years ago. You have to give Anton Szandor LaVey credit on this. He said, why should I go out and buy new product when I've already got it? It's simply wrapped up in a pretty new bow. This is true. You look at bands today wearing black. Black is the new color of popularity, just like it was back in the 1980s. Red Velvet was around back in 1950s, and yet it's coming back into play today. But yet people do not realize that either because they don't pay attention to history. A proverb perhaps suits best. A man who does not learn from history is doomed to repeat it. That is why it's best to do your own research. To go out and become obsessed with the research, the topics. In the book Evoking Eternity by E.A. Koetting, the first book he got on magic was The Necronomicon by Simon. The first time he did a ritual, it failed miserably. But yet, after 3 months of studying and becoming obsessed with the pages, taking notes, he subconsciously or unconsciously created a system that actually worked. And when he performed that same ritual again, he got a reply, a response. How many people actually go out and do their own research? How many of you accept things at face value? That's the question. But instead of accepting things at face value, why not just pick up a book? Anybody can type in a topic and get your basic underlying understanding of any given issue on Google. But to actually get sources, references, to delve into those books, the actual books, not a one page or a half a page of written things that has been posted on Google. You can get 10 times more information from books by going out and putting out that energy and actually studying a path for any given time. You don't have to do it for a year. 3 months, 6 months on any given topic is always good. But it gives you that experience, that understanding. And it will make you better for it in the longer run. So keep that in mind. And I'll touch on this down the road. But for now, I think enough has been said.